I was contacted by Honda Press to try out one of their cars, they were probably waiting for the generic response of Honda Civic Type R please. But actually, as you know on this channel, we like our performance cars. But specifically, I want to help people see through the sea of hatchbacks and SUVs that have entered the market and decide which ones are worth putting your money to. And that's why I replied back to Honda Press and said that I wanted to try the Honda Jazz Crosstar. This thing is a Honda Jazz, but with a little bit of an off-road appearance. And in today's video, we're going to be getting acquainted with the Crosstar and deciding whether it's really worth going for over the standard Jazz. So if that sounds good, then please keep watching. And if you like new car reviews and car content, then hit the subscribe button. Something that I was surprised to discover about the Crosstar is it's not actually a model on its own. It's simply a trim level. And that makes it a little less complicated when you go to pick your Crosstar, because actually this only comes in one specification. Now it's based on the very highly spec'd X version of the Honda Jazz. So this is the Honda Jazz Crosstar X. And that means it gets some nice equipment like a rear view camera, parking sensors, LED headlamps, and I'll go a bit more into the specification later on. But this car, as the Crosstar, will cost you just under £2,000 more than the standard Jazz. So what do you get? Well, mainly it's in the styling. You get some chunkier styling, including you get some cladding down the side, you've got a redesigned front grille, and you also get those roof rails and 16-inch wheels. So is it better off-road than the standard Jazz? Well, no, not really. It sits on 30mm higher springs and it has that chunkier styling with the roof rails, but it certainly cannot be described as an off-roader. So why would you go for the Crosstar? Well, the main reason would be you sit higher. The Crosstar has a 30mm higher ride height when you're sitting, so it gives you a better, more commanding view of the road. And for the people that are interested in the Jazz, I think that's going to be a good thing.
What do you mean by that?
Now, it's not going to be to everybody's tastes, and not everybody likes crossover styling, but it certainly is popular. And in fact, when I bought this car home, my mum said, "Wow, that looks really smart." And after I made a bit of a joke about her age, we decided that, yeah, actually, it does look pretty smart. It's got a cute face, it's got some nice daytime running lights, it's got some smart alloy wheels, and it's also got a nice contrasting roof. But are those things alone enough to make the Honda Jazz Crosstar worth that £2,000 uplift? Well, there are a few extra surprises, which I'll show you later on. The Honda Jazz has never won any awards for being the most visually appealing that you can buy. Something like a Peugeot 208 is far smarter in its styling. But what the Jazz does well is it's unfussy, it's unoffensive. It looks pretty good, whilst not really being too flash, and that's what people like about it. They like the fact that it doesn't stand out, and it does its job of being a hatchback or super mini pretty well, and the Crosstar is exactly the same. The only thing I dislike about the Crosstar is this chunky rear bumper. Finished in that off-black grey design, I just think it dates the Crosstar quite quickly. Now you might be wondering, as this is a slightly chunkier looking off-road version of the Jazz, it must get a bit more boot space, right? Well, actually, no. The Honda Jazz Crosstar has very slightly less than the standard Jazz. Now, it's not enough to make a difference, and you certainly wouldn't notice. And all the positives about the Jazz are still in place. It still has a reasonably low load lip, so it's easy to lift items in and out. And underneath the boot floor, you've still got a really nice little box down there to put any hidden items that you want to keep safe. And it still has the same rear seat configuration as well, which means that when you place the Jazz's rear seats down, it leaves you with a completely flat load bay. Whilst rear space is not quite as practical as something like the Volkswagen T-Cross, which gets a sliding rear bench to give you more boot space or more legroom for the rear passengers, it's still really practical because of the way this bench is designed. There is a ton of storage underneath to allow these seats to lay completely flat. And that means that if you are sitting in the back and you have slightly longer legs, you can almost tuck them underneath the bench to give you a bit more room, and that definitely gives you an illusion of a bigger cabin. I've also got a ton of headroom as well. Most people should be comfortable back here. Of course, the middle seat is almost completely unusable, but then what car of this size is not? You get 2 USB charging ports back here, which is really helpful, and these front seats are nice and slim as well, so again it adds to that feeling of space. High specification cars and cloth don't usually go hand in hand, but I think if you're going to get away with cloth interior in any car, it's probably going to be the Honda Jazz. I don't mind the seats too much, but this dashboard, it's just a bit of cloth overkill for me. Now, Honda say that this interior is actually waterproof. Whether that's true or not, I can't confirm. I'm sure there's people out there that have tried it. But I think for my class of journalism, if I sent the Honda Jazz back with an array of liquids on the seats, I might not get another Honda. Everything is pretty nice in here though. It all feels good quality. There's not too many squeaks or creaks from the cabin. I love this steering wheel. It's a really soft leather, and it's also quite a strange design in the fact that it's very, very circular, and there's no middle part to the steering wheel, which is quite cool. It feels futuristic, just something a little bit different to what everyone else is doing. The touchscreen is also a real highlight for me. It's frameless, so it actually might only be 9 inches, but it feels much larger, and everything you put on the screen completely fills it, which is really nice. You've got air conditioning controls, which are physical as well, so I think the class of person that will be buying the Jazz will really appreciate that you get physical climate control dials. In fact, buttons are very good and everything works very well. You've got physical volume control button, which also has no sign on it, so you'll never have an upside down sign, if you understand what I'm talking about. The scrollers feel really high quality. They're nice and quite heavy metal. You've got buttons down here for your parking brake, for your econ, so you can drive in a more economical mode, and you've got loads of buttons on the steering wheel. 2 USB charge ports, no USB-C here, which is great. A 12-volt charger as well, and you've got a really good amount of storage, especially for what feels like a small car, despite being slightly jacked up. You've got storage in the centre armrest, you've got a cup holder in the centre, and as well on both sides of the dashboard, which I really like. You've got the standard glove box, which is down here, which comfortably fits the car's manuals in, and then you've also got a little bit of extra storage, which I've put all of my rubbish into in the top part of the dashboard. That really does make living with the Jazz Crosstar really handy. I mentioned earlier that the Jazz Crosstar gets just a smidge less boot space than the standard Jazz. And you may be assuming that that's because of the chunkier styling. Well, it's not. The Jazz Crosstar actually gets a bit of specification, which the Honda Jazz doesn't get. And that's something that every Jazz owner's ever wanted. A subwoofer in the boot, and that means you can blast out Eminem on this pretty good sound system. Thanks to that 30mm increase in ride height, I've got a really good visibility out of the Jazz. I've got a nice big windscreen, I've got front pillars which are clear, I can also see nicely out the back and out of the side. Visibility is fantastic. And if you're not a confident parker, the Jazz gets a rear view camera and front and rear parking sensors. And it's also not that much bigger than a general hatchback. So actually you get the benefit of that ride height, which gives you a much better view of the road, but it's no harder to drive or park. Because of this long bank holiday weekend, I've had the Jazz Crosstar for just over a week, and I've done a mix of longer journeys and shorter journeys, and overall it's been a very positive experience. The Jazz Crosstar is best at lower speeds. That hybrid engine means that you have just enough power to weight ratio with 108 brake horsepower, but because of that burst of hybrid power, the Jazz Crosstar feels pretty nippy for its size. There's also no trouble at low speeds with that CVT gearbox. However, it's not quite as impressive when you get on a dual carriageway. Pop your foot down, and that 1.5 litre hybrid engine starts to scream and the gearbox gets quite jerky. But that really is when you're only pushing it hard. Most of the time, if you're driving at lower speeds, the Jazz Crosstar copes really well. And actually, once it settles out on the motorway, it feels pretty good. But you will see that fuel economy drop if you're on longer journeys. Shorter journeys, you'll see around 60. Longer journeys, however, on motorways, you'll see it drop to around 40-50 miles per gallon. Not as impressive, but still pretty good for a petrol car. Despite being just a compact crossover, it gets some pretty big car tech, including adaptive cruise control, which works really well on the Jazz Crosstar, and it will slow you down and speed you up depending on the traffic conditions. The lane assist works really good as well, and it's not too intrusive. It only does pipe up and start to take over the steering wheel when you really do start to verge over the lanes. But most of the time you can drive around with your lane assist on without it being too much trouble. The one thing you mustn't expect from the Jazz, due to its higher ride height, is that it's more comfortable on the road. It still soaks up bumps okay, and it isn't a car which sends shocks through your spine, but it's certainly not more comfortable than the standard hatchback Jazz. So that finishes my review of the Honda Jazz Crosstar, a car which, if you want a subwoofer in the boot and something which looks like it could go off-road but it can't, could be for you. I'm totally kidding. I think this is a great offering in the crossover market. It offers loads of space and storage. It also gets a great specification, and of course it's going to save you in those petrol costs because of that wonderful hybrid engine. It's a big thumbs up from me, but let me know, what do you think of the Jazz Crosstar? What else would you go for in this category of car? Let me know in the comments down below. If you have enjoyed it, please go ahead and give it a big thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos from me on Auto Social UK, then hit the subscribe button.